an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Welcome to The Fatigue Fixer, the podcast where we get real about why you're so tired and what you can do about it. Every 2 weeks, we'll gather here for honest, heart-to-heart conversations about reclaiming your energy, your patience, and feeling truly at home in your body. I'm Dr. Sarah Vadeboncoeur, a naturopathic doctor, Menopause Society certified practitioner, Enneagram 3 entrepreneur with enough business ideas to last me 10 lifetimes, and a hockey and baseball mom. Over the past 15 years, I've helped thousands of women just like you cut through the confusion and finally feel like themselves again. And now, I want to hear from you too. Use the link in the show notes below to leave me a voicemail, to share your story, give feedback on an episode, ask a question, or tell me what's been exhausting you. And your voice might even make it onto the show. Together, we'll get to the root of what's really draining your energy and give you the tools, clarity, and encouragement you need to fix your fatigue. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to The Fatigue Fixer. And if you're new here, this is where we explore the mental, emotional, physical, and societal reasons why women are tired and what we can do to fix our fatigue. Today, we're talking about a concept that is so important to me that I had it tattooed on my arm. Last fall, I was at a workshop with Liz Gilbert and Martha Beck, and they spoke about the idea that where we feel discomfort, we should ask ourselves, where am I not telling the truth? The minute I heard that, I turned to my friends Michelle and Leah and said, we need to find a tattoo shop because I'm getting a tattoo tonight. I now have the words, "Speak your truth," on my left inner wrist as my reminder and my compass of the most powerful tool that I have to create a life and relationships that are authentic, my voice. Being fully expressed and being authentic are core values for me, and I see how self-silencing can really take its toll on a woman's health, her well-being, relationships, and quality of life. That's why I've invited today's guest to help us all liberate our voices. Elise Besler is a somatic voice coach and healing practitioner who helps singers, speakers, and creatives reclaim and awaken their voices so they can speak and sing their truth without fear and stress. Through her signature coaching methodology, Somatic Voice Liberation, Elise helps her clients move beyond perfectionism, fear of being seen and heard, performance anxiety, and the old stories that whisper, "You are not good enough." Somatic Voice Liberation goes deeper than tips or tricks or quick fixes. It's about making the lasting change to find safety in your body so your voice can finally be free. Elise has over 2 decades of experience as a coach, performer, educator, and award-nominated singer, songwriter, and educator. Her mission is simple: to help you remember that your voice is your power. Elise, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so funny because literally as I'm reading this, I feel so much energy moving in my body, and I don't usually feel like this when I'm recording this. So already something is happening in my body, and that's a big part of what I want to dive into with you today, because one of the cliches I think there are around our voice, especially women's voice, is this idea of finding your voice. And I would argue you don't need to find it because it's already there.
That's right.
Yeah. Talk to us about what you mean when you talk about liberation. What does it mean to liberate our voice?
Yeah, I think that so many of us, as you mentioned, have the experience, including myself as somebody as a trained singer, a performer, have the experience of our throat locking up or feeling like we had to suppress our truth or that maybe we said something and we were shamed for it, or, we carry all of these stories in our bodies and, it becomes locked down. And our throat in particular is such a vulnerable place in our bodies that to liberate, to me, it just feels like the most inviting thing in the world. And, many of us have had the experience of liberation. So that one time that we were able to speak our truth, I love your tattoo idea, by the way. I love that so much. But to speak our truth, or that one time we, went out on a limb and said the thing that we were holding back. And then afterwards, it was like that surge of energy that moved through our body. And then all of a sudden, life changed after that one moment, that one boundary that we set, or, that one truth that we spoke. I think it's necessary to live a full life, to be liberated. And so it's an idea of just letting the sound move through and letting our truth move through as well. I don't know if that answered your question, but
It did. I think what I've seen and heard from women that I work with is we tend to focus on the fear and the risk of speaking, right? Of speaking our truth, of saying the thing, of setting the boundary. And I think we sometimes forget or don't realize that there is a cost to not saying things. Can you talk about what you see with the people that you work with in terms of what is happening in our bodies and our minds when we are not speaking our truth and our voice is not liberating or liberated? What does that look like for people?
So I'm noticing my heart just started, not racing, but just started beating a little bit stronger and a little bit faster in my chest as you mentioned that, because it's big. What I notice, and specifically in my, I'll speak kind of in two ways of my own experience in my own life, but then also the women that I'm working with, and men too. I don't just work with women. Migraines, IBS, anxiety, chronic fatigue, right? I know this is what your podcast is about, the fatigue fixer, but it shows up. For me, it showed up as chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that, as I mentioned, our voice is our energy, and we need to be moving that. Like our voice isn't meant to be suppressed. It's meant to move up and out. And when we suppress our voices, then our bodies will respond. And so I would say that probably the challenge becomes more like a lot of people, as you mentioned, are afraid of setting that boundary, or the backlash more like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet living with not speaking the truth and the suppression of the sound is actually more costly than that one challenge, that may show up with that one person if you do set the boundary or if you speak that truth. So yeah, it really does show up in our bodies as illness, dis-ease. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think you said this earlier. You are missing out on a full life.
Yeah.
Which, to me is heartbreaking that we have this tool. All of us have this tool that we're born with, and that, I have a 9-year-old. Children know how to use their voice, right? If you've ever been around children, this is not something that most of us need to learn. If anything, we need to remove all the barriers that we've accumulated as we've grown, telling us that we need to be quiet and we need to be polite and we need to be kind, or our needs don't matter. All these stories that we've internalized that have made us afraid to use our voice. I agree with all of the conditions that you just listed, and I would add to that list PMS. So many women are like, why do I get so angry before my period? And what I try to work with them to understand is the stuff that enrages you before you get your period probably also bothers you at other parts of your cycle, but your hormones are allowing you to tolerate that, right? So that's just another example of if we used our voices in a time where something did bother us, even if it wasn't a big thing, but we just said, you know what, when this happens, it makes me feel X and Y. My thought is that we would alleviate a lot of premenstrual rage. Talk to us. One of the things that I've seen you talk about is the voice, our voice, being the channel for our truth.
Mhm.
How can we use our voice to live a fuller life, to speak truth? How do we even start to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, especially where it is such a challenge for so many of
Yeah.
us. Uh, Building capacity is my invitation. Um, there's a reason. So first of all, to anyone who's listening, to myself, to you, Sarah, to anyone in the world that's going to hear this, the difficulties with speaking up, the difficulties with using our voices are very wise and protective. And so if there's one thing that I would hope that folks would take from this today, this conversation, is that there's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. The lockdown mechanism, the freeze response, even the fight response, like I think about, people feeling guilty or ashamed after they've lashed out, say maybe during the PMS or, even just in any kind of conversation. All of those responses are really wise, and they're indicative of a nervous system that really doesn't necessarily regulate or move back and forth between those states of calm and stress with fluidity. And so the answer is always, at least in the work that I do, is always to begin to build capacity. And we do it slowly. And that's why I said, in that intro, it's like, this isn't about tips and tricks. It's about making lasting change. And that can be seen as a threat by our brains because we have these patterns that are so freaking wise. And all of a sudden, we're going to make change? No. That's why when we rehearse scripts, we'll rehearse like a boundary script, or I'm going to have this hard conversation and we rehearse what we're going to say, and then we get into the situation and it's like my throat doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much. It's just too much. So yeah, building capacity, I think, is really where we begin.
This is why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because I feel, shame is a strong word, but I feel embarrassed to admit that as someone who finds it relatively easy to use her voice, I've kind of had this attitude of like, just do it. Like, just say the thing. And learning more about your approach and just learning more about the nervous system, like I realize how short-sighted that is, and that for some people, they have repeatedly been shown that it is unsafe to use their voice. So as you say, they're not doing anything wrong. If anything, they're doing exactly the right thing, which is protection and self-preservation by staying quiet, especially if somewhere along the way, their voice was something that put them at risk, whether that's physical, mental, or emotional risk. One of the things that you talk about is this idea of needing to create safety first. So before we even think about speaking our truth or liberating our voice, we need to create safety in the body. Can you talk to our listeners about why a lot of us don't have this sense of safety to begin with? Why are a lot of us walking around with a nervous system that is highly activated? I can think of many, but I'd love your perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this question because there's so much we could dive into with this piece. I think if I were to redo those reels and redo those TikToks that I've created in the past, I would say, let's create relative safety. Because what does that even mean? Like, I don't get to decide what feels safe for you versus like anyone else that I'm working with. And so, everybody's lived experience in the world is different. And the stats are something alarming, like 87% of adults in North America have experienced some kind of complex trauma. And so any conversation that we're having, we're communicating with another nervous system that has experienced something that potentially suppressed their truth. Or, as you mentioned, they needed to stay quiet in order to literally survive. And so titration is a word that I like to use. It's through somatic experiencing, which is one of the modalities that I use in my work. Little bits, little bites. If we shock the system, you mentioned earlier by saying, just do it. Well, sometimes we can just do it. And then there's a recoiling that happens afterwards, right? So I think little bits at a time is really important. And when we work with that wiring in our body, and I know this sounds all very technical, but really we're just letting our bodies come back to first nature, right? We're seeking, at any given moment, we just want to feel safe. And so relative safety for you might look different than relative safety for me, versus somebody else who's in a more marginalized body that lives in the world, especially right now. And I feel my voice shaking because it's almost impossible to be regulated in the world right now.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on, And so how do we reorient to all of the stressors of life and of hard conversations and all of that? It's through our nervous system.
One of the things that you talk about, which I think is really important for people to know and is a good reminder for me, is that 80% of felt sense of safety comes from the body to the brain.
That's right.
We tend to get a little bit brain focused, and obviously the brain is a big part of what's scanning and searching the environment for threats. Can you talk a bit more about how the body is talking to the brain?
Yeah, it is our felt safety. I always like to say we live in nervous system first bodies in a brain first world.
I love that.
Yeah, so our systems sense safety or lack of safety before our brains know it. It's always on the lookout. The feelers will say. It's a little bit alien almost, right? And so, in the way our nervous system works, and just for anyone who's, I talk about the nervous system all day and I'm like, the nervous system. Sometimes people are like, what is the nervous system?
That's true. Maybe we should set the stage and
dial
define
it back a bit.
Yes, thank you.
But, I know this because of, when people go, they kind of look at me like, oh, yes, we know we have a nervous system, but what is it? But essentially the wiring. It's the wiring. It's the way our bodies, are wired. And, and that wiring is either of threat or of safety. And it's like 500 million year old DNA kind of stuff, that we came to this earth with. And so our felt sense of safety comes from our body. And oftentimes our brains will try and make meaning. Like we can say, actually, I was just talking to a client earlier today. He's a public speaker. And he said, I was on stage last week. My brain was like, yes, I'm ready to do this. I'm prepared. I've got my keynote ready. Everything's fine. He's like, but my left knee would not shut up.
It didn't get the memo.
It was like, brrr, it was shaking. And there was nothing he could do to say to that knee, like, okay, it's fine. You're okay, right? And so when we build kind of felt safety, or again, relative felt safety in our nervous system, then our brain can make different meaning of that threat or perceived threat, right? Including, I always say, like if you're a public speaker or a performer and you're on stage and somebody has like an eyelash in their eye and they roll their eye, just to like get their eyelash out. Well, if we're in a state of threat, we're going to perceive that as like, oh my gosh, they hate me. They think I'm terrible. Or if we're in a state of more calm and ease, more regulation, then we might go, maybe they had an eyelash in their eye, right? We're able to see things differently. And this affects our voice greatly because if we're in a state of threat, our throats are going to lock down as protection, as we mentioned earlier.
What I've seen is those different bodily things that you talked about. I think most of us have been in a situation where we could feel that something was dangerous or unsafe or someone was not a good person, like we can feel that. Most of us can feel what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen is that, again, because of the way that a lot of us were conditioned, we kept ourselves in rooms that didn't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't remove ourselves. We didn't say anything because that felt scarier, even though our bodies were literally trying to send this message of something's not right here. And so I think what happens for a lot of us is we either eventually ignore those bodily sensations, or we stop trusting them because somewhere along the way, we learned that our intuition or our gut feelings or gut instincts, or however we want to phrase this, were not to be trusted.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us don't trust the feelings that we have because we've been told that we shouldn't. And one of the things that I think you've said that I think is so true is this idea that, like, in order to use your voice or liberate your voice, you need to trust yourself implicitly.
Mm-hmm.
How do we start to create trust, or how do we come back to trusting those sensations that are there to tell us either get out of here right now, or the flip side, which we also like, this feels really good, please do more of that.
Yeah.
How do we start to kind of trust our bodily sensations again?
Great question. And I think just to speak to what you mentioned earlier about even staying when we don't feel safe, we're wired for connection. And I think, like, as humans, right, we're wired for connection. And I'm going to raise my hand. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a fawner. That's my home away. That's my dysregulation away from home, right? Yeah. Is that I will say yes when my body is screaming hell no. And so I think, to answer your question, like, if we can remember or remind ourselves from time to time that, again, I mentioned earlier, like, there's nothing wrong with us. Like, when we bypass that gut feeling, but then also remembering that we're wired for connection, like we're meant to be connected to other humans. And so sometimes if we I keep using boundaries as an example, but if we say the hard thing, it might mean disconnection. And then there's like our attachment stuff from childhood and all of that kind of shows up, right? But, I think it's about, again, it's creating that relative safety. Once that capacity is there, we're able to sort of, do you remember bobbing for apples? Did you ever do that when you were younger?
Yes.
So I kind of think of like a tub as we're bobbing for apples. And if you had like so many apples in the tub that like they wouldn't bob around in the water, and then people would start taking them out with their mouth. And then all of a sudden there was less apples. And then there's like more, it's like more of an opportunity for the apples to kind of bump into each other. But there's like more fluidity in moving around the tub or the bin. That's kind of what I look at it. It's like, oh, all of those stressors are still there, but they're bumping into each other and they still have space to kind of like bump in and then move away. And, you can make different decisions, or you can actually make a choice or say, I'm noticing my gut feels funny. I'm going to bump into that stressor, and then I'm going to be able to go, no, thank you, right? When the capacity is there. But when there's too many apples in the tub, I don't know if this analogy makes any sense at all, but when there's too many apples in the tub, it's like, it's just too much. Like there's no way. How can we trust something when there's so much information coming at us?
Mm-hmm. Would a different analogy be, like, I often use the analogy of like the tabs in the computer, how most of us have like 100 tabs open, and we have 100 tabs open in our mind and our brain at all times.
Yeah.
So when you talk about creating capacity, are you talking about like rest? Are you talking about closing some tabs? Like, what are we talking about when we talk about capacity?
Well, I would think of the tab, like through the work, I would think of the tabs as like a really smart output of our brains. Like our brains saying, no, we got to have all those tabs open, right? Because that's safety. I think of it more like rewiring the stress responses and giving our bodies an opportunity to find a different pathway. So that, maybe then we're like, oh, well, I don't need that tab open, right? Or I don't need that many apples bobbing around in the bin, right? So yeah, I think that all of these analogies are really great. But then how do we do that? And yes, rest is important, but for folks who are in a flight response, rest is impossible.
Right.
Right? And we can say, okay, yes, I know I have to rest or I have to sit and meditate, but our body, again, is screaming something completely different. How do we do that? Well, we work with the wiring of the body to rewire those maladaptive patterns, those unserving patterns.
I love that. Hey, we're going to get right back to today's episode, but I want to take 30 seconds to remind you of something important. Your body has a voice, and fatigue is often how it speaks when you've been ignoring its whispers. If you've been feeling tired, disconnected, or unsure about what your body needs anymore, my Effortless Energy Reset can help you tune back in. It's a 6-week online program that walks you through my Speak method, a step-by-step process to help you sync, pause, examine, align, and rekindle your energy so you can reconnect with your body's wisdom and your inner voice. It's simple, practical, and designed to fit your real life, not add more to your plate. And right now, when you use the promo code FATIGUEFIXER, you'll save $50 off your enrollment. Join today at fatiguefixer.ca/reset and start listening to your body again. One of the things that feels really tricky for people, I think especially people who have any kind of public space where they express themselves, is that, like you said, the world is in an interesting place. There are a lot of things happening. There are a lot of people with opinions. Part of me feels, I don't know how you feel about this, I feel like one of the ways that our fight response is showing up right now, because most of us don't physically engage, is like keyboard warriors who go online and take out all of their anger and frustration on strangers on the internet. And so I think this can show up in a couple ways. One is just in your regular day-to-day life, there's more polarization. There are topics that have become super like polarizing, and it feels like if you don't have the right perspective, you're going to get attacked. And then certainly for any of us who share ideas more publicly, it can feel very unsafe and like threatening. How are you talking to people about navigating this time where it can feel maybe even more scary to say the thing that you want to say? But again, if you don't say it, there's a cost. So how are you encouraging people to navigate using their voice in this time where maybe it feels scarier than usual?
Yeah, I think that piece that I mentioned earlier about remembering that we're wired for connection, because those keyboard warriors, they're also looking for connection.
That's so true.
And, there's so many polarizing ideologies, and there's so much misinformation, and there's so much angering stuff that we're witnessing. And that perspective is led by our nervous systems. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself again, but
that's fine.
Working with our nervous systems is one of the best ways to be able to notice something and then make a different choice, right? Or to be able to stand in our own dignity, still say the thing that's important and necessary, and when somebody comes at us, to be able to say, okay, and still be in my dignity, still be here standing tall. The fear of being chastised comes with a great amount of privilege, and also there's an opportunity for us to all kind of be seeing the other person on the other side, even if they make us super angry, because they're still looking for connection.
Yeah. And I would argue if someone says something that creates a lot of activation in your body, then maybe that's something to explore.
Yeah.
Right? The greatest learnings that I've had is by allowing myself to sit in the discomfort of someone else's words and really ask myself, why am I so bothered by that? Because if there's no part of me that feels that what they said is true, I would be able to probably dismiss it a whole lot more easily, but there's something here. And maybe that's not true for everybody, but certainly I have found that the things that really activate, and again, my body's giving me feedback.
Yeah.
It's saying I'm having a response here, and that is something potentially to explore. And what I would add to what you said is that I think a lot of times, again, we silence our voices in an attempt to stay in community, which again makes sense from a safety perspective. But a lot of times we end up with weaker ties in our community because we're not showing up authentically.
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone listening who is scared. Number one, like Elise said, that's not wrong. You probably have a lot of reason to be scared. But are you open to working with your nervous system, creating more capacity? Because the upside of using your voice and being authentic, in my experience, is much deeper connection with people.
Yeah. And I would lovingly ask the question. That's my fawn showing up. I don't want to be too harsh. I'm acknowledging I'm in the place now with my nervous system where I'm like, I'm fawning right now. But I would say that, if our relationships of any sort are dependent on appeasing or staying silent or saying just the right thing, then they're probably not the right relationship for us.
I agree.
And that's hard too, because we're wired for connection, right? So there's like this cycle that shows up. But yeah, there's a lot to get curious about. And even just the capacity, again, I keep using the word capacity, but like to sit with discomfort, for some people, that's just a no bueno. Like it's like how do I even do that, right? And again, that word that I talked about earlier, the titration, the little drips, little bits at a time is how we build that. So that eventually it's like, okay, cool. Like that's how you feel. This is also how I feel, and I'm going to stand my ground.
Yeah. And I think that I'm thinking of like exposure therapy, right? Where maybe you take a small thing that you want to say that isn't going to like create massive tension in any key relationships, and you say it, and there will be a reaction, and you will hopefully have capacity to tolerate that reaction and to realize nothing really bad happened here. And over time, you get more confident and comfortable in saying the things that need to be said. But like, even for me, again, I would say I'm someone who's like quite confident and outspoken. And there are definitely certain relationships where this is very hard for me. I still find myself sitting there like rehearsing the thing I want to say in my head. And I can feel the lump in my throat. And I'm like, just say it. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it.
That's right.
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that like this is not easy, even for those of us who are maybe more extroverted or more confident or, have more capacity to do this.
Can I add something to that too?
Please.
There's this piece around like in the middle of the discomfort isn't the time to rewire. It isn't, right? It isn't like, we have to build the capacity when we're in a place of safety. So it's like in the middle of the argument or the middle of the hard conversation or, insert difficult situation where we have a hard time using our voice. Our brain is processing survival mode in that moment. So we can't make change when we're in survival mode. We cannot. One of my mentors once said through neurosomatic intelligence, they said, we can't be in performance mode and survival mode at the same time. And so, one might say, oh, performance mode, like I'm on stage or I'm an athlete and I'm performing. It's not really about that. It's just about having optimal capacity to be able to get through our daily tasks, right?
Right. Well, I'm thinking of like everyone I know who's at work being like, I can't focus, I can't think, I'm forgetting everything. Like your performance is probably suffering because you are in stress mode.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so thinking about building that, capacity or the ability to be able to sit with discomfort, have the hard conversations, it's, quote unquote, trained outside of the stress response. Because stress response going to stress response, right? Like in the middle of it, it's like it's just not the time to. What did Elise say on that podcast? What was that thing that she said I should do here?
I need to build capacity now. How am I going to do that?
My brain's going to say, F you. Like, that's what it's going to say. It's not. Yeah. It's like, no. We're not going to do that, right? So I just wanted to name that, for anyone who's listening to this, like, oh, well, how do I work with my nervous system? It is really about doing that and creating that relative safety outside of the stress response.
It's kind of like I'm thinking of a similar thing, like don't file for divorce when you're PMSing. Like don't pick a fight when you're enraged.
Yeah.
If there's a conversation that needs to be had, wait until you're maybe in a different space with more capacity to have the conversation.
Yeah.
One of the things that you talk about is singing. You are a singer. You talk about singing. You work with singers.
I am.
I have recently started going to church. And one of the things that I love most about it is the first 20 minutes is just singing. And the first few times I went, I literally just stood there like bawling.
Yeah.
Just so many emotions coming out. And I've noticed that like I love live music. I love singing. I love concerts. Like there is something for me that moves me so deeply when I'm singing or surrounded by live music. Talk to us about the benefits of singing.
I had goosebumps when you said that because it's so true. I want everyone to sing. I want the whole world to sing. There's a reason why it feels so good to be in the presence of that and then also just to do that, like to actually have that practice. We are our own sound healers. We pay money and go to these like crystal bowl sound healings and gong baths, and they're amazing. And it's, sound healing when somebody else gives it to us it's beautiful. And also, we have the capacity in our bodies already to regulate our nervous system with our voice through humming or singing, to create joy, to process anger, sadness, insert emotion here through singing. And it's because when we sing, we vibrate our body through our nerve. There's various parts of the nervous system that happens through, but it really is powerful. It really is a very, very powerful thing. And in community, come on, like with other people,
good.
Like we're attuning with other people. Our heartbeats sync up.
I've heard that.
Yeah, the wavelength. I mean, I could actually cry when I say this, but like, I feel like the world would be a different place right now if we all just sang together once a day.
I agree. I think that's what moves me so much is I literally look around this church and there are people of all different ages and different races and men and women. Like everyone is so present. And I'm like, they have taken time out of their week to come here. And we're all just like singing. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're listening to this, like, could this be as simple as like belting out to the latest Taylor Swift album in your car?
100%.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I do
yeah.
that
Like,
too, but
it doesn't have to be a mantra. It doesn't have to be a hymn. It doesn't have to be anything. It could be happy birthday. It could be just making noise. It could be just humming like tones, But it's actually one of the practices that we do when I'm first encouraging people is just humming, just like one note. It doesn't have to sound musical at all. It still gives you the benefits.
I mean, I'm just thinking of like, we know this because this is how we soothe our babies. We know it inherently that it's so soothing and healing. Yeah. And yet, again, a lot of us, I think, have forgotten, especially if we feel like we're not a quote unquote good singer, that we shouldn't sing. But I think we've all felt that like emotional release of belting out some song out loud in the car, in the shower, wherever you want to do it. It is so powerful.
That's liberation. So to go back to that first question, that's liberation. The moment that we feel that, like, and for those listening, it's that moment you can track in your body where you start to feel, and I'm going to use in quotes, good, right? Oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling some kind of goodness in my body, a warmth, an ease. My shoulders dropped, right? My diaphragm released. I'm able to breathe. I'm feeling connection to other people. That's it. Yeah. And singing can offer that to us.
I love that. So, given that this is the fatigue fixer, and one of the things we aim to do here is to help women, alleviate some of this fatigue, is there one thing that you would encourage our listeners to try to think about that may help fix some of their fatigue, specifically through liberating their voice?
I think just what we just spoke about, it's something that we can all do, is because if we have access to our voices, some people don't, for various experiences, medical experiences. But if we have access to our voice, give it a whirl, and see what happens. How do you feel before you sing? How do you feel after you sing? That's regulation. And in the broader picture, if we're talking about regulation, so why not use singing, if it feels joyful? Also, some people like to process those heavier and those, harder emotions through music and through singing as well. But yeah, and I think, the other piece is if people are curious about how their nervous system or working with their nervous system can help them, because the fatigue, of course, is the output, right? It's too much.
It's also the suppression.
Yeah.
The suppression is energetically very expensive.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we've all felt that, right? Like there's something that you're just really wanting to say.
Yeah.
And you're using a lot of energy to not say it. That's also very costly.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that earlier with all of those outputs, the migraines and the IBS and the, all of the things that are showing up. So using, your voices, as an invitation to the listeners, using your voice in a way that feels good for you. So if it's Taylor Swift, if it's Stevie Nicks, if it's whoever, or even just going to yoga class and participating in the Om at the end of the class, if maybe you stay silent, like what might that be like in community, right? And just kind of checking it. It's a good starting point.
Doctor's orders. Everyone's going to start singing.
That's right.
I love it. Elise, thank you for being here. This was so lovely. I will make sure that we link to your work so that folks who are listening who want to learn more and maybe deepen their knowledge can find you and work with you. I hope you're feeling inspired and more confident that there are things that you can do that maybe aren't as scary as just do it, which was my approach, but feel a lot safer and more pleasant, as Elise had says. And I think it is so important. Just one of the things that really stood out for me in preparing for today's episode is this idea that we need to create safety first. And I think Elise spoke very beautifully to that idea, right? How do we allow our body to feel safe before we liberate our voice? So go put on your favorite song, do some singing, some humming, and I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody. I know your time is precious, so it means so much to me that you're here. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a woman in your life who could use a little extra energy and encouragement today. It's a small way to show her you care, because we're all in this together. Wondering what the next step is? Find out what's really draining your energy by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. You'll discover which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with, like frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your mind won't turn off, or drained fatigue, where no amount of sleep ever feels like enough. Your results will include recommended labs to ask your doctor about, plus my top suggestions for habits and practices that can help you start feeling more rested, calm, and in control. Because here's the thing. Being tired all the time isn't normal, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. And hey, if you've got a story to share, a question, or just something on your mind, leave me a voicemail. Your voice might even make it into a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not all in your head. I believe you, and we'll figure this out together. I'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.